Ladies and gentlemen, the honorable judges, the honorable teachers, and my best regards to all the participants here. First of all, before I begin with my speech, I would like to say thank God for the grace and guidance, and to all of the judges and the committees that helped me to participate in the English speech contest in our 2020. Although we are in the pandemic situation, I hope it's not going to affect any of our products. But don't forget to pay attention to health protocol every time. So, have you ever thought that the simplest thing can affect the biggest thing that you have never considered before? Let me give you an example. In developing countries like Indonesia, who owns the market and the economy? Is the lower middle class or the upper class? They are people of the upper class, which is foreign state. If you don't believe me, let's prove it. At the highest level, such as large corporation and factories, there must be found a member of the foreign that is the owner and CEO. It is not that wrong to achieve the position that it make an extraordinary effort. Then, where did the indigenous people go? Foreign governments play a large part in the economy of the market. They are at the top levels to manage small middle class enterprises like indigenous. At the highest levels, they decided which economic policy for everyone. Because since the colonial government of the Netherlands, the indigenous people have been underestimated that there is discrimination between their race and their ethnicity. Now, I'm going to share with you some of the most important ideas that have ever been discovered in this era. But before I start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Shafwa. In this change, I will deliver my speech under the title Protecting the Rights of Indigenous Communities in Developing Economies that Justifies Exploitation as Necessary Means. Ladies and gentlemen, do indigenous people exist? Do the native of region exist? Is speaking indigenous taboo and false? Should we hide the existence of indigenous people? These questions must be answered to develop similar effort and understanding between fellow citizens. Do you know that United Nations has an important and sensible role to play in upholding and protecting the rights of indigenous communities? It is still apart from the right to freedom from discrimination, especially based on their origins or identities. Under the United Nations General Assembly 61 to 195, the United Nations declared the rights of indigenous communities. Indigenous people have the right to manage and reinforce special spiritual relationships with traditional ownership or first person, to use land, water, coast, and other resources to maintain their responsibility in this regard to future generations. But that is right, indigenous communities are not completely different to indigenous people. Why? Because up to more than 50 years ago, the economic growth in Indonesia was supported by the exploitation of natural resources, of the waters and forests. So, the exploitation has often been serving the indigenous people who have lived in the natural resource region for a long time and have been urban with cultural belongs. Ladies and gentlemen, from the Arctic story, there are some issues of exploitation that can harm indigenous people. There are, first, the burning of forests and land belonging to Kalimantan by foreign companies of Malaysia and Singapore. The resources like the forest have suffered severe damage as a result of forest burning that aim at pursuing short-term profits. So, it can curb the traditional system of indigenous people. Second, fishing using explosives in the northern and southern province of Aceh. This created a discord for indigenous fishermen who still use traditional methods of defending their natural resources. Besides, this stopped the villages and made damage herds and surrounding environment. Third, building illegal mining with a permission from the authorities. It would at first the indigenous and the state government. Ladies and gentlemen, what is the purpose of this speech? Can anyone tell me what to do to reduce exploitation to protect the rights of indigenous communities? Indonesia has begun to abandon economic development that still depends on the exploitation of natural after generations. This exploitation is carried out not to export or good. Economic transformation are performed by not the magic or making sustainable exploitation through the utilization of non-wood forests in environmental services. For example, Malaysia uses sweet flowers exported to become fragrant papers. However, although improvements in the management of land rights and the exploitation of indigenous people, the fight continues long and long to restore their lands, because it was not easy to get this land back in complicated state. So, in my opinion, the resource management should be left to indigenous communities because they are more familiar with the local wisdom of the area and the treatment of its resources. Also, they have special rights to carry out the existing custom, but they don't forget that they are also citizens of this country who must look at the rights of other citizens of their territory. Finally, this is the end of my speech. I would like to say that we, as humans, we are the same, even though we are different races and ethnicities. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, your skin color, your gender identity. What makes the difference is how we behave with one another, and don't exploit too much in developing countries just for such reasons. Thank you for listening to my speech. I hope you are in safe and healthy condition.